Hey everyone, I'm Nick from Coffee Before Arch, and in this episode of Python 3 Crash Course, we're going to continue looking at matplotlib, and this time we're going to look at how we make subplots, as well as a couple new kinds of plots. So let's just jump into the example here, subplots.py. So as we did last time, we're going to import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new figure. We're going to make some modifications to it. So in this case, to kind of explain what this plt.figure does, is it will create a figure for us to reference. So in this case, if we want to reference a certain figure, we can give it a number, right? And so every time we access this number, we'll get that figure associated with the number. If we don't provide a number, it will just increment a counter. If that number exists, it will return back basically the figure that corresponds to that number. If it doesn't exist, it'll create a new figure. So in this case, it says I want to create a new figure. I want to index it with 1, and then this fig size is basically telling us, how big do I want my figure to be? So if you don't put a fig size, it'll go to some default figure size. Here we're saying, this is going to be a width then a length dimension. So this says I want a 9-inch width figure that's 3 inches tall. So that's all this 9 and 3 mean. And then, like the last time, we're going to create some data. This time we're not going to use numpy, we're just going to keep it simple. We'll create a list with 3 values, being 1, 10, and 100, and then we'll create some labels. So instead of having, an x coordinate and a y coordinate, maybe we'll just have a y coordinate, and then we'll have, instead of, 1, 2, 3, we'll just have A, B, C, right? And so that'll be on our x-axis. So let's go ahead and show what the figure looks like at this point. So you'll see that we've got kind of a wider figure than normal. So we'll go ahead and do Python3 subplots.py. And here we see we've got this wide figure now. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about subplots. So let's get rid of this, and then let's uncomment these. So this plt.subplot, it says I want to create not a completely new figure or something, but it says, within the current figure, I want to create a subplot. And it's indexed with 3 numbers. So the first is saying how many rows are going to be in the subplot, how many columns. So this is just saying basically how many of these subplots am I going to have. So if I have 1 row with 3 columns, that means I'm going to have 3 possible subplots to pick from. And then the last number is basically indexing which one. So this says I want 1 row with 3 columns, and I want to index the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and create that one, and then on that subplot, I'll go ahead and do a bar graph. So bar graphs are a pretty common type of plot that we want, and we'll do it just like we did with a plot in the last example, where we give it some x values, this time being the labels, and then some y values, which will just be 1, 10, and 100 this time. So we should get 3 increasing bar graphs. So we can go ahead and show what this looks like, adding that plt.show. And now that we see, we'll get, in that first index, the subplot in this figure, we'll get a bar graph, right? And here's our labels on the x-axis, and we've got 1, 10, and 100 up here. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue on. And we'll show off another type of graph we can do, which is a scatter plot. So sometimes we don't want our plot to kind of interpolate between these individual points. Maybe they're not connected. We just want them as individual points where it doesn't make sense to connect them. So we'll go ahead and index the next subplot using 1, 3, 2, and we'll add a scatter plot there with the same labels and values. Okay, so let's go ahead and add plt.show and show that off. And now we've got 2, right? So we've got on this same figure, now we have 2 plots. Here's our bar graph, and now here's our scatter plot, this time with just an individual point of 1, 10, and 100. And so finally, we'll just include another plot like we did in the first example video of matplotlib, which is just using plt.plot. And so this will just give us kind of a line plot. And so we'll go ahead and uncomment the rest of this as well. So we've got this plt subtitle, and this just gives you a centered title on your figure. So this just says 3 different plots on the same figure, and then we'll just show that figure at the very end, and that'll be our final figure. So we'll call Python subplots.py. And now you see we've got three of these subplots, one that's a bar graph, another one that's a scatter plot, and then another one that's a line plot, all on the same figure. So this is convenient if we want to say represent maybe one kind of data three different ways, and we don't want to have to create three plots and then maybe in whatever editing software we're using, or maybe if we're trying to put this in a PowerPoint, we don't want to have to maybe import three different images and then line them up in PowerPoint. We can just have them all neatly packed together. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode. As always, feel free to check me out at github.com/coffeebeforearch, where we've got all these code listings. So if we go ahead and go to my profile, we've got all my repositories here. So today we looked at Python3 crash course, and over here we've got links to all the previous videos, as well as links to all the files associated with those videos. So we looked at from pyplot basics, this subplot.py. So feel free to download it, play around with it, let me know if you have any questions. And as always, I'm Nick from Coffee Before Arch, and I hope you have a nice day.